Alright, welcome back to the Crucible Brothers. My name is Lionhearts, and today is going to be a sad review, I am sorry to report. There is just no way around it. The Mida multi-tool is a great weapon in a bad meta, and honestly, you should not use it, but today we're going to talk about its pros and cons, what can be done to make it better, and why exactly it cannot ever succeed in the current meta. But before we get too far into it, make sure you guys take a second, like the video, leave a comment because it helps out immensely with the YouTube algorithm, and then make sure you subscribe as well. We're almost at 6,000 subscribers, one more step closer to 10,000 subscribers. So every time you do it, you help us on that journey. Thank you guys for the support. We love you all. And we're trying to keep things short and concise today, so let's get right into the review. And that's because there's not much of a story to tell here. Mida, the perennial D1 favorite, one of Destiny 1's best exotics, one of Destiny 2's first overpowered exotics, has unfortunately spent the better part of 3 years now in the darkness, in the Shadow Realm, banished to the realm of off-meta or unusable at various points, and unfortunately it's never quite recovered from that status. And that is despite Mida having a lot of really interesting advantages in terms of a 1v1 weapon. You look at the stat package, right? You look at this kind of separate from the meta. Mida, as a weapon, it has good range, good stability, great handling, it gives you free lightweight, you get the benefit of Knucklehead radar, always having your radar up no matter what, you get high caliber rounds, and since they changed the catalyst to be useful, you get no distractions. So in theory, you are a perfect laning duelist because you can't be flinched, you can't be crept on, and you have high cals to help you win your gunfights. All that sounds amazing once you detach it from the meta, but as soon as you put it in the context of other weapons in terms of relevant ranges and time to kill, you realize that, wow, none of that matters. In terms of meta context, first off, public enemy number 1 for Mida is definitely Dead Man's Tale. Why would you ever use Mida over a DMT? They have the same base time to kill, except the Dead Man's Tale kills in 1 shot fewer, does more damage per shot, has perfect hipfire so that it can duel in the close range, and abuses damage boosts better to get a much faster optimal time to kill. Everything that DMT does, Mida can do, but just slightly worse. So right off the rip, in terms of scout rifle competition, why would you ever use Mida? That's tough. Secondly, at least currently, pulse rifles have crept into the scout rifle role. There's no doubt about it. High impact pulse rifles, no time to explain, have essentially made scout rifles next to impossible to use. Why would I ever use Mida and its 1 second god-awful time to kill when no time to explain will delete everything that walks at 0.67 seconds without even me having to touch my mouse? And while yes, we do have some long-range maps like Disjunction and Eternity in the game now, even then, when you're outranging stuff like no time to explain, you're still just going to lose to Dead Man's Tale. You're still outclassed. What it really boils down to, and this is the worst part for Mida, is that because it comes from an era of much simpler exotic design, it doesn't have any room to break free from its archetype. There's no damage boost. There's no real way to augment what Mida does to help it break free from its archetype. I mean, facts are facts. The 200 RPM and 180 RPM scout rifles are the worst archetype of weapon in the game. They simply are not worth using. Everything they do is done better by other weapon archetypes, and they're flatly left behind. The only edge case that's ever been good for Mida is if you can abuse certain damage boosts. Stuff like Frontal Assault, Weapons of Light, Charge with Light, and Well of Radiance do give Mida the ability to achieve a 3-tap kill, which makes it quite deadly. But the problem is that Destiny has kind of restricted the higher damage boosts in PvP. Previously, Charge with Light was very easy to get. Empowering Rifts did more damage. If Radiant existed in previous seasons before that damage boost was adjusted, then it would be broken, because in theory you could just proc Radiant and then 3-tap with Mida, but those damage boosts are now 15%, and it's no longer good enough to achieve the 3-tap kill with Mida Multitool. Charge with Light is now much less common, so once again there's another avenue for that 3-tap taken away. These were what Mida would need to have a spot in the meta, and unfortunately they're just not there anymore. I mean, here's kind of the stone cold reality, right? Because Mida is a simplistic exotic, you could, in theory, replicate what Mida does with a regular legendary 200 RPM scout rifle, especially if one were to ever be introduced into crafting. Because all you would need is enhanced no distractions, enhanced moving target, and to run Knucklehead radar on Hunter, and you would have a legendary weapon that does everything that Mida does without requiring the exotic slot. And that's kind of a sad thing to think about, but it's more so a product of Mida being so old that frankly its design has just kind of fallen behind. What's interesting to think about though, and that's what we'll close the video on, is that not too recently, Mida actually had a spot as an off-meta threat. If we cast our mind back to the Beyond Light meta last year, when the 120 RPM hand cannons were still dominant, Mida actually had a great spot as a legitimate off-meta threat before the rise of DMT, before the nerfs to 120s, and especially Whisper Hedrons. During that 2-season window at the beginning of Beyond Light, when everyone was abusing Charge with Light to 2-tap with 120 hand cannons, Mida existed as sort of your long-range answer to 120 hand cannons. Because they matched in base time to kill, Mida could actually outduel with its high caliber rounds, still contest snipers, and be a versatile off-meta threat. And in the same way that 120s abused their Charge with Light to 2-tap, Mida would abuse Charge with Light to 3-tap, allowing it to keep up in terms of time to kill. This was a really cool niche for Mida multi-tool, and in fact, back during that era, before I was really doing YouTube videos with Gumi, I actually used Mida quite a bit in trials because it would be a sneaky off-key pick, especially on a longer range map like Bannerfall. The difference between then and now is the shift in base time to kill. Because everyone was using 120 hand cannons because they were so perfect for that meta and so abusable, the base time to kill in the Crucible went from being the 0.87 seconds of a 140 hand cannon to the 1 second of a 120 hand cannon. This made the base time to kill in duels a bit slower than what we're used to, even though people were abusing damage boosts to spike past it. But when those damage boosts weren't up, people were dueling and peak shotting and taking chip damage fights more and more because Shatter Dive was so oppressive and made peaking a lot harder. All this culminated in a space where Mida could actually compete in the current era, for the first time since double primaries. And really, it was because the environment was a lot similar to that poke team shot style that was popular during the double primary meta. But again, as soon as 120s got nerfed, DMT got its catalyst, Whisper of Hedrons was nerfed, basically everyone just threw their 120s in the trash, went back to their Fatebringers, their Dire Promises, their Palindromes, and that was pretty much it. That was the nail in the coffin for Mida. As soon as the average time to kill went back to being faster than Mida, and especially the rise of DMT before its nerf, there was essentially no more of a chance. Mida again was relegated to the trash can, only for enthusiasts to attempt to use. And then it got even worse, right? Charge with Light got nerfed. Damage boosts across the board were nerfed to be slightly less effective. This was to help prevent things like the 122 taps. Adversely, this, again, neutered the last good thing about Mida. At this point, what Mida is hoping for is an Archetype overhaul. Again, I think it's meant to be essentially the most adaptable 200 RPM scout rifle. It's not meant to be this crazy weapon with a crazy perk set and like damage boost and variable modes or whatever. It's meant to be, like its namesake, a multi-tool, an adaptable weapon that fits in almost every situation through its versatility. But right now, it doesn't matter about its versatility because the Archetype is simply too bad to even start. So hopefully Mida gets some help, and one day we can see this classic return to some level of dominance, because it's a fun weapon. It feels good to use, and it's one of my favorite exotics from Destiny 1. And that is the end of this video, a little bit of a dour one today, but sometimes you gotta talk about exotics that unfortunately aren't very good. It's not always gonna be roses, peaches, and success over here on the Crucible Brothers. We're gonna call it how it is when an exotic is unfortunately not it. And Mida currently is very much not it. But if you used it, do you like it? Do you use Mida still? Have you used it recently? Let us know in those comments down below. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment, like I said, because all of that helps with the YouTube algorithm and makes us grow even faster. We love you guys. Thank you for support lately, and we will see you in the next video. Peace.